Bobby Burns, candidate for 5th Ward Alderman here in Evanston. And I'm with these wonderful leaders and happy to be here. So if you want to just open up with introductions for those who don't know any of us.
Well, I'm Simmons. I am currently the 5th Ward Alderman, and I am happy to be here as well.
And I'm Holmes. I'm the former Alderman in the 5th Ward before Alderman Simmons. And I'm extremely happy to be here.
And, I'm curious to know what was some of your conversations like between Alderman Holmes, you and Alderman Simmons before you decided to run, or you were just considering it. What were some of those initial conversations like? Because I know it was always very important to you to make sure the next person, whoever was interested, that they do their due diligence. And so what was that? What were those conversations like early on?
Well, one of the things that when I first ran for Alderman, all the way back, I ran as a request from the community. And after I had done one term, people asked if I'd do a second term. And I agreed to do that, provided people helped me, but I wasn't going to do any more. However, there were no footsteps behind me after the second term. So I did a third term, but absolutely was not going to do another one. And looking for talent within the community, and actually, Robin called me, and I was so excited, I didn't even realize that she had that interest. And talking to her and listening to her, and she'll tell you I'm pretty hard. we talked a lot. I wanted to know what kinds of things that she was interested in, what kind of things did she want to support, and what kind of vision she had. So I think our conversations helped educate me in terms of her commitment to the community, her commitment to the 5th Ward, her knowledge of the 5th Ward, and her vision for the 5th Ward is what sold me.
Now, why is that important? Some people treat politics where it's more about a popularity contest, but you treat it as, hey, I have to vet this person. Why?
Because I am not a politician. I make that very clear to everyone. I'm a public servant. And I look for people who really want to provide service to the community. It's not a popularity contest for me, never was. I had done over 30 years of community service in the community, way before I even thought about being an alderman. So service is very important to me, commitment to this community. I grew up here, I raised my family here, and I love the 5th Ward, love my people, love what this 5th Ward stood for, and I always wanted to see it come back. I know things change, so I'm not saying it has to be like it used to be, but the commitment to the community should be there. The dedication should be there. The work should be there. The vision should be there. And you need people who are going to do that. Otherwise, you're right, it's just not a job for me, it is a commitment.
And what was Alderman Simmons, what was your thinking when you decided to run? What made you want to run?
Well, I always did what I could in the community based on my capacity, my skill sets, my influence, anything that I could add. And it wasn't until I heard that Alderman Holmes was not running that I started to think about it. And I was a supporter of Alderman Holmes while she was in office, and learned from her, supported her vision for the ward, and supporting the small business community, pushing more diversity in our procurement process at the city, showing up to ward meetings, just being active. Taking her lead, she recommended the best way to impact the community was to start a block club. I did that. And then, as I found out, she really wasn't running, because, she said that before. And I thought I would further prepare myself anyway. I felt that I had been preparing already, but I knew that the role was very intense, very time-consuming, required a lot of knowledge and information. I saw in participating in council meetings that there were sometimes 1,000 pages to read, for one meeting in preparation. So then when I went to her and told her I was considering it, it wasn't immediate, great, I'm endorsing you. It was countless meetings, calls, sits at her house on the phone, asking information, getting questioned, being redirected, learning what the vision was that remained after her term was up, thinking about how I might be able to lead it, and
You
just
remember
learning.
what some of those things were? Some of the
Yeah, sure,
work that
absolutely.
remained?
So one thing that I think was really important, and I appreciate the time that she required of me to learn the needs of the ward, it helped me prepare for my role when I was in office. And continuity and leadership, continuity and vision. Many of our goals in the Fifth Ward are multi-term, sometimes more than 2-term goals,
Right.
just
Good point.
because of the legislative process and how many meetings it takes and how long it takes to identify funding and partners and so on. And so one of the visions that she had and pursued in her term was the development of Church and Darrow. And that was one that I came in immediately on day one after my talks with Alderman Holmes, as well as all the residents of the Fifth Ward through my campaign process. I came in with an agenda and an action plan, sat down with the city manager. What are the next steps to advance these goals for the Fifth Ward? And so even today, after me near completing a term, we're just now getting to negotiating with a buyer and developer that's in line with the vision of the Fifth Ward, a community organization that served for 30 years along with another affordable housing development. And that's an example of what it takes to actually strengthen a community. No one can do it in one term, and actually no one person can do it alone. It takes people that are willing to be collaborative, and she was collaborative, and she gave me a lot of direction, introduced me to people that I otherwise would not have had relationships with. That helped strengthen me as a leader, and it also helped strengthen my toolbox so that I could have more ability to serve the ward.
Can I just pick up and say,
Please.
some of the things that are just really strengths for Robin is that once she said that she was running, you could begin to see her head would pop up at a committee meeting at the city or a council meeting, and she always came to the ward meetings and stuff like that, but you begin to see, okay, she's really interested in this. And you have to have that, and the consistency. That's the other thing, is that you got to be consistent. And the thing that I love, the example that she just gave, there were several things that I said to her, I couldn't complete these, but please put them on your list.
Right.
And she's done that, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm sure she'll do the same with you, and that's one of the reasons why I'm endorsing you, is because you have said to me, I want to build on what Alderman Simmons has started. And that's the only way we're going to be able to continue our ward in the way that we want to see it work.
I'm curious how you both would answer this. So sometimes there's people haven't been in the role, so they make assumptions about the work, the time that goes into it. And some people may think that the job that it's not as time consuming as I think it really is. So what is the job of being an alderman? For those
I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, for those who have never been alderman, because that was a conversation I had early on, I think, with Alderman Holmes, and she recommended that I call the other aldermen, and I did, which was, and I had conversations with all of them. I said, I understand that there's a difference between being an organizer, being a consultant, and being an alderman. And I've never sat in that seat before. And so my one question to all of them was, if I get an opportunity to serve, what can I do to be most effective? And it also was a conversation about learning what the job is. And because, this elected positions don't really have job descriptions. It's not similar to in the private sector where you know what you're getting into. You have a job description, you can read it, they have certain qualifications they're looking for. It's really not like that for public service. So I think because of that, people don't really know what the job is. So could y'all offer the public?
Absolutely. So the job absolutely is what the people decide the job is.
Yes, that's right.
Period. There's no job description. That is developed over your time of door knocking, talking to residents, talking to the business owners in town, taking an assessment of what the needs are, prioritizing their urgency, and coming up with the action plan. That's the job. And in terms of preparing and the time, so what I did was when I decided I was gonna pursue being alderman, one other thing that I did was actually talk to Alderman Holmes and other elders in town. Hecky was the second person that I went to, and others, Mr. Robinson, those that had seen everything before. You know, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
And, I really think that we should consult with the elders more, but we're not here for that. Either way, I asked, is there somebody else running more prepared than I am? And if that is the case, I will prefer to support them, because campaigning is expensive, it's time consuming, it's laborious, it's emotional, and I wanted to serve the community in the best way I was prepared to. When I decided to run, I actually scheduled my calendar based on Alderman Holmes' automatic responsibilities. I thought I did anyway. So I went to the council meetings, committee meetings, the ward meetings. If there was a community event, ribbon cutting or something like that, I stayed in the shadow. I observed what was happening and saw her responsibility, and made sure I had the capacity, time capacity, to even add that into my calendar.
Right.
And I did that. When I got in office, I realized that I had calendared the meetings, like the live time, the time at the dais, but you can calculate another hour for every hour of public meeting time in preparation, and the meeting after the meeting, and so on.
Right.
So it absolutely it's a full-time job. I know on paper it's documented as a part-time job. We get a small stipend. Every ward is different. The needs of the 5th Ward are immediate, they are overdue, they are intergenerational, they are multicultural, they are all across every economic background. We have students and seniors and young people and families, and we have multiple languages and businesses that need opportunity. It's a full-time job with a small stipend, and you have to be completely in it. Heart is in it. This is a heart job.
Absolutely. And with high expectations.
Yeah.
Our ward has the highest expectations of any ward in the city, because they expect for you to show up to everything. I mean, really, literally everything that's going on in the ward.
So was that seeing that I thought I had Alderman Holmes' calendar down, but had no clue on all of the preparation, developing relationships with staff, developing relationships outside of city partners to bring innovation into our community. We don't want to just work in our echo chamber. We want innovation. And then the committee works. Committee is very important. I learned that from Alderman Holmes. And the committees that I joined were based on her recommendations of the areas that have the most need and opportunity to improve the ward. Those committees: economic development, community development block grant, MWEBE, human services, committees you wouldn't really think of, the obvious economic development, but administrative public works has major capital improvement projects that are on there. They have other high budget items that are on that agenda, and being in those committee meetings and chairing them allows you to give some direction of the agenda, which allows you to direct the outcomes of the recommendations that are coming to city council, and you can do that in the best interest of the ward.
You know, I'm glad y'all said it, because I'm not sure people always catch it, but what I've told people during the forums is I say, I've arranged my life the past 10 years to make myself available for volunteer opportunities. And that's been demonstrated in my ability to, first and foremost, take care of home. You know, build a consulting company so I can take care of home, but also make myself available to opportunities that aren't going to pay you what you put into it. You know, and you're not looking for it. You're not looking for that. You're doing it because it adds another value to your life and to the well-being of your community. And I don't think everybody gets that all the time. Why I say that, and that's why I wanted to ask that question, because making sure you have the time for this, I think, is really important. I also have said that, you know, I really rely on staff as a community member. I've had, over the years, many conversations with Paul Zalmazak, economic development manager. I've had conversations with Pat Satnagar, one of our project managers. I've had conversations with Sharon Johnson before, workforce compliance coordinator for the city, and on and on. And I've talked about how those conversations really have helped me understand the city better, what the roles are of each department, what some of their priorities are, what their vision is, because they have visions as well for the city.
Absolutely.
We have a really talented and capable and smart staff, and I don't think people catch that all the time too. So it's just good to hear that is good preparation for the role of public service.
It makes a big difference, Bobby. I'll tell you, when I came into office, like you, I had done business with the city years before I was elected. So I was already familiar with the procurement process,
Right.
some of the barriers, and some of the rooms for improvement. So I was able to serve on committee and try to make some improvements. But coming in, having a relationship with staff, at that point I had already interacted with the city manager on various projects in town, as well as, other staff members throughout. It makes a difference to be able to get in office and start. We don't have the luxury of a large time for a learning curve in our ward.
Right.
The moment that Alderman Holmes transitioned out of office into her emeritus aldermanic role, I think that day I had all the emergency calls, the things that don't even make the agenda, the families that are in need,
Right.
the neighborhood crisis, and how the community is responding to those matters. Businesses that need you. Those don't even make the agenda, and you have to be prepared to serve and respond. You have to be able to work with the staff to get things done, be innovative, be resilient. It is a beautiful, beautiful job for someone that is well prepared.
Where do you think we go from here in the Fifth Ward? I'll let you answer that first, Alderman Holmes. Where do we need to go from here?
The sky is the limit in terms of your vision. There are several projects that you'll still need to, if elected, that you'll need to work on, hopefully, that Alderman Simmons has started, that will need completion. So I hope you have the same vision for that. But you have vision in terms of things that you want to do that you'll leave for the next person. So whatever your vision is for the board, whatever you're hearing from your constituents, so you want to keep in touch. Let people give you the ideas, and then you build on those.
What do you think?
Same. I mean,
Yeah.
You know what? I think that there is not enough credit given to history and seasoning and experience, and it's all about change. And sometimes the change really is to advance the vision that we've had.
Right.
We are still working on Alderman Jourdain's vision
Yep.
Right.
today, right? And so I think that the existing vision, the needs of the ward, and your innovation, that's what makes this time now special. You're coming with your own ideas, your own lived experience. You have your own way to pursue and advance those things. To do it in collaboration with projects that are already ongoing, I think is I know that it's what the ward needs. We don't have a time to, reshuffle the deck and abandon ideas and projects that have taken years to pursue. So what I believe in you as our next alderman is that you will honor the hard work that's been done long before me, because I'm just supporting the work even long before Alderman Holmes.
Right.
That you will honor that work, those goals, hear from the residents. We have a changing community. We're not the historically black community anymore. We're very diverse. And you have a young family. So you have some other perspectives that even Alderman Holmes and I didn't have. You have school-age children in school right now. So you have some different layers to your background and your current lived experience that I believe can contribute even more so than we have.
Right. And as the old folks would say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
So just remember that. And there's lots of wisdom within this community that can be helpful to you.
Yeah.
Just take advantage of it.
And I want to say this before I go, that why I support you as a candidate. So let's get to that. I have seen you lead in the community. From my recollection, it's been about 10 years. I've seen various initiatives that you have taken lead on, and you've been fully committed. You have convened different members of the community, even outside our community, multicultural communities, intergenerational communities, to work on efforts such as, protecting what's now Gibbs Morrison, looking at education in the Fifth Ward, neighborhood safety. This is what I have observed you work on. And I knew pretty early in my term that my capacity to serve for 50 hours a week, sometimes 30 to 50 hours a week, depending on what's going on, would be limited, still having to work traditionally. And at that time, I really just started paying attention to who's doing what, who's showing up, who am I seeing at the ward meetings. I can see how difficult it would be for someone to start in the role of alderman and they've not heard the community discussion happening at ward meetings, at Black Club meetings. They have not observed city council meetings. They have not observed committee meetings. And I've seen you present. So to bring you up to speed is not that difficult. So you have already the working knowledge of what the goals currently are, as well as your assessment on what the opportunities are and a vision and a path to get it done.
Yeah, I would add to that. I was sitting here thinking, when you talked about his vision and his commitment to the community, it was in my second term. I was getting ready to run again, 2009, I believe it was. And we want to live. I was so impressed with the title first. I thought, who is this kid? Turned out to be Martha Bunch's kids, but anyway, I went to the parade. I just never will forget that. And I didn't see you around. You weren't in my circle for a while until Gibbs Morrison. And then I began to see you there. And I was so impressed with you as a father, a young father, always having that baby. So I always loved that. So I knew you were a family person. I think those are important characteristics for this job as well. But the commitment, and I have to admit, because I like to make mistakes, I make mistakes.
Right.
And I had to separate you as a possible candidate from you as a consultant and as a campaign manager. I had real issues with that, but I had talked about that. Yeah. But I see the difference, and I see that you really do understand the difference. And I was willing to lay that aside, and I hope everyone else is too, because I think there is a bright future with you in the ward.
Yeah, we can close with this. The one thing I've always really wanted from this ward, and they've given it to me at different moments, is just to feel a part of it, I didn't grow up in a neighborhood where it felt like we belonged, and I had friends where I grew up, in not necessarily in the immediate area, but just in that neighborhood that I went to school with. But, I was introduced to families in the Fifth Ward, both through my mother's work in the ward, but also through our busing system. There were Fifth Ward students being bused to Orrington, where I went to school. And I met them there, and we continued on to Haven. And I told you this before, that I used to, so I grew up on, my apartment was on Jackson, across the street from Northwestern Stadium, on Jackson. And so, I don't know if I told you this, but they would say, the kids would say, oh, what neighborhood you from? They trying to frisk you and check you out. And I said, I live on Jackson. And they're like, you live on Jackson? They saying the one in the Fifth Ward. And I wouldn't lie, but I wouldn't correct them. I was like, yeah. And then there's also another Burns family, I think, from the Fifth Ward. And so I used to get that too. The Burns family, and again, I wouldn't lie, but I wouldn't correct them. I was just like, whatever it is. So I've always loved what y'all had going on here. And you understand very quickly that this is a neighborhood of families. And sometimes what I've said during the campaign is that being here connected me not just to black people. Like, I affirm my black identity, yes, but it's deeper than that. It's like, to be a black Evanstonian means that you're connected to, the way I understand the history, some sisters who came from South Carolina. Like, there's a history to it, and obviously it just doesn't start and end with that family. But the way Lonnie and other people say it is, a lot of people that are from here came from South Carolina. And what I would like to see, I see a lot of white families and Latinx families in the ward. If the Latinx community, the white community, acknowledges and comes to know and understand that history, then that allows people, our generational families here, to then say, you know what, I want to know your journey now. You know, and I think that's needed. You know,
The exchange is excellent.
yeah, that exchange is important, but I think there's an order to it, because if people were here first, and we see displacement happen all around the Chicago area, if you're coming in as a new member, acknowledge the people who are there, right? And then that makes them want to reciprocate that respect and acknowledgement and say, well, I want to know your journey too. Whether that journey started abroad or in this country or even in Evanston. But they're more willing and I think looking
Well, it's the
forward to
sharing and
reciprocating.
learning of each other's cultures that's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah,
And I'll say this, as black people, as black Americans, we usually have a heads up on that
right.
because we had to learn the culture in order to
Right.
survive. And so therefore we understand the other cultures, but they never bothered to learn about us.
Right.
And that is where the divide is. So you're absolutely right.
And I
That's
got
a
that
good
from
goal.
Piloto, Piloto is not just from him, but we were talking about it. He did the "You Are Brilliant" mural with Alderman Simmons and other people in the community, and he even acknowledged that. And here's a guy, you know, originally from Mexico, but he's in touch with kind of his native roots in Mexico, and he acknowledged that. Look, this is an African American community, and it was important, even as I was doing my mural, that I was in tune with that history. And he pursued it. He asked people about it, as you probably know from working with him. He was curious about who was here and the history of the people that lived here. And he wanted to, as much as he could, incorporate that into his work. And I think that's important. That acknowledgement is important. And so I want to try to, I think part of, we thought of Holmes, we talked about, you know, Shorefront
Yes,
relocating
absolutely.
permanently to the Fifth Ward and maybe on Church and Dodge. But part of that for me, why I'm so excited about that vision, is I want to make sure that that our Latinx families in the ward and our white families and even our black families who aren't from here can be introduced to that history, because there's some frustration there that history is being overlooked, that people are being displaced, and that history is not acknowledged, and I think we can do something about that. And I think Shorefront can help with that.
Absolutely.
Putting that on, you know, right on Church and Dodge, where it's in the way and people can walk in and out of it and learn about this place, I think is important, because some people, if you didn't grow up in Evanston, a lot of people don't even think black people live here. I don't know if you got that growing up,
Of
but
course, I mean,
yeah,
even in my
they
young
didn't even
life, they're
know.
like, oh, you live in Evanston,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
must live on Sheridan Road with a
Right.
private beach. Like, no, there's actually a
Whole nother
community beyond.
Yeah, because of where it is, the only thing that puts you close to it is the high school.
Right.
And even then, you could just shoot down Church and miss it. And then if you think about even the way the strip is on Howard, where you have a lot of units, if you're coming down Ridge, you're going to fly by it and you'll never know. And so just the way this community is set up and the way, you know, people have been, how we live in a segregated town, they think that there's no black people here.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of, in a lot of ways, this area has been, to the outside, has been made invisible. Like it's not even here. And not only is it here, but it has, in my opinion, the richest history in Evanston.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's now, because of your work and your work, Alderman Holmes, it's now being told on a much larger platform and scale, which is wonderful. And I just
And
want
let's pass that torch on to you now, and you make it even better known.
I would do my best. I would do my best. I appreciate y'all for allowing me this opportunity. Just want to say thank you for your service, and I'm going to do my best and work as hard as I can for this ward. I know y'all will be there for me, to mentor me and help us all through this.
I really look forward to my new role of supporting you, because I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, y'all ain't going
And I
nowhere.
will be very laser focused on continuing to repair the Fifth Ward and empower the Fifth Ward and families. And in my new role, I look forward to being available to support you in whatever it is you're doing, as Alderman Holmes has been for me. Without
For sure.
the support that and the access that I've had to Alderman Holmes, the the efficiency of being able to just pick up the phone
Right.
and call her for, what's the deal on this? What's the history?
Right.
You know, who do I talk to? Here's an idea. I thought I had a lot of brilliant ideas. Turns out those ideas weren't new. So I
Right.
could say, okay, well, who else cared about it? Who was working on it? Now I could reach out to that person
Right.
and just keep the ball rolling from there. And a good example of that is the African American history sites.
Yes.
I thought it was my idea. I just thought it was so smart, right? And creative.
Right.
And I called Alderman Holmes and I called Dino and I want to do this thing. And they're like, well, you know, that work is really largely done already.
Right.
Maybe 12 years ago or
Right.
so by a community group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to work with the folks that already cared
With
about
pitch,
it,
yeah.
Right.
pick up that pitch document, you know, freshen it up,
Right.
add a little innovation, and hand it over to Dino for Dino to really take ownership of it and help it advance through a process. So really having relationships and having dialogue is important because sometimes you can save yourself a lot of work and a lot of headache just by getting the background. And that's what Alderman Holmes allowed me to have access to, which allowed me to really accelerate some of the goals that I had in my term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank y'all for coming out.
Well, thank
No,
you.
thank you.
We're this is a snow day, so we all need to get to wherever we're gonna be. So I don't want to hold y'all, but thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you.
Not a
All right.
problem. God bless.